Trigger warning: this episode contains discussions of sensitive and potentially distressing topics, including abortion, abuse, and related experiences. Listener discretion is strongly advised.
Welcome back to the Sexytime podcast. Today we have a special guest. I know we always say that, but this one, she is an award winning
You also
journalist.
say that a lot.
She's a
This
storyteller
one.
and a fearless truth seeker. She is Natashya Gutierrez. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi,
Thank you.
Natasha.
Hi, guys. Thanks for having me. That's a nice intro. I'll take it.
Well, I have a little bit more. I want to expand a little bit more. Natasha is the sharp, compelling voice behind some of the most important conversations in the region. And today she's here to talk about one of the most complex, emotional, and controversial topics in the Philippines right now: surrogacy. Let's dive into it.
Basically, what is surrogacy? For those of people who are listening and don't know what that is.
So, surrogacy is an arrangement wherein a woman agrees to carry a baby or be pregnant for someone else. So, in the simplest of terms, it's basically me saying, Ava, I'll carry your baby for you. But it
Yeah.
gets complicated as to then what, right? I think that's where the complication is. And you talked about the complexity. There's also two types of surrogacy. One is gestational, which is it's your
Yeah.
egg, it's Ava's egg, and the sperm of your partner or a donor that just uses my womb. So it's literally just my womb for rent or for hire. And then
Yeah.
there's traditional surrogacy, wherein it's my egg and it's only the sperm donor that is someone else's, right? So that's a little bit more complicated. But in terms of commercial surrogacy, it's more often than not gestational, wherein it's someone else's egg and someone else's sperm in a woman's
And you recently did a documentary in the Philippines that uncovered basically the secret, like underground world of surrogacy. Ava and I both watched it. Could you tell our listeners kind of a brief gist about what it is about before we dive into it and ask questions about it?
So I've heard about surrogacy happening in the Philippines in conversations among friends, right? I think we're all of the age when we're talking about children and infertility is a thing and
Yeah.
people want to have babies. And I started hearing that there was that surrogacy is something that
Yeah.
happens even in the Philippines. And so that got me really interested and I started asking around. And you don't have to dig deep. You literally go on Facebook and you will see a lot of pages of women literally offering up their wombs. It's like the way you would go to Amazon and it's a product.
Yeah.
Like a womb is a product and a woman is selling their
Yeah.
womb and offering their womb to carry someone else's child. So there's a whole underground marketplace in the Philippines wherein women offer themselves in exchange for money. In the Philippines, what is the minimum wage? $10 a day. That's 550 pesos.
Yeah.
That's not going to get you far, right? But
Yeah.
service arrangements are minimum, if it's your first time, $10,000. Where are you going to get that money? Right. So it's basically just another opportunity to make money and it's thriving. It's a business that's thriving. It's an industry that's thriving. And I actually now personally know 4 people who have used surrogates to get pregnant.
Yeah.
So, I'm not just hearing it's thriving, I'm seeing it in my own life. And so that's something that's happening in the Philippines. There's no law that governs surrogacy in the Philippines. The only law that they follow is the fact that,
Catholic law.
well, it's legally, it just means that if you give birth to a baby in the Philippines, the birth mother is the legal mother,
Yeah.
period.
Okay, yeah.
So in that sense, that makes surrogacy legal, right? Because if I have
Mhm.
your baby, that means under
Yeah.
the law, it's mine, even if it's your egg and if it's your sperm. The
Yeah.
law will side with me. So that's the only law that governs it, which technically
Okay.
makes it illegal.
The first part of the documentary, she interviews this girl who, again, surrogacy is illegal in the Philippines. So when you enter into an agreement with how do you call it, a surrogate and the intending parent,
That's right.
there's no contract because nothing is regulating, right? And so you interview this girl who agrees to get into an agreement with an intended parent into a deal where she carries the baby. And then what happens? She talks about going into postpartum depression because of something.
And
Yeah.
we call her Gloria in the film. But if you notice in the documentary, which is with Al Jazeera, by the way, you
Yes,
guys can
please.
watch it. It's on YouTube. It's called
Yeah.
Wombs for Hire. I put my name, Natashya Gutierrez. But if you notice, the 2 surrogates or the 3 surrogates that I interview all wanted
Yeah.
their faces covered because it's still so
Yeah.
stigmatized, right? And again, it's
Yeah.
secret and they could go to jail because it is illegal, right? So this woman named Gloria, she wanted to make money for her two children
Yeah.
from a previous partner. She had heard from someone that surrogacy was an option, and there are people called handlers and they're middlemen. And what they do is
Yeah.
recruit women to be surrogates for intended parents. And so a handler reached out to her. She joined a Facebook page just to like read about it. And the handler reached out to her and said, "Are you interested in becoming a surrogate?" And she had no idea what surrogacy was, right? But when she was told that she could earn up to $6,000, which is again what we're talking about,
300,000
Less
pesos
pa?
around.
I thought it was minimum 10,000. How come
Yeah,
6,000
for
now for
like
her?
other agencies. So that's the other thing, right? When it's not legal,
Okay.
the rates are so different.
May commission pa.
Yeah, it's almost like binabarat mo, right? Kung papayag siya ng 6,000, why not, right? So $6,000, she wants to build a house. So she says yes. She says, you know what? My pregnancies were fine. They were easy. And her justification was like, if I'm also able to help someone, then great.
Yeah.
Right? She falls pregnant on the first go. It's natural insemination, which I think, no, not natural,
Oh
sorry.
my
Because
gosh.
natural insemination
My
in
reaction, I was
surrogacy
like,
means
okay.
it's literally a man
You did.
pregnant, right? But her arrangement was traditional surrogacy. So
IVF.
she had natural, not natural, the
Okay,
insemination, IUI.
yeah.
I think you guys discussed
IUI.
this, right?
Yeah.
But you know, even the way she described it, she said she was told to get on a bus, meet me in a bus station. A person takes her to a clinic. She can't describe to me where she is. She just says somewhere in Pampanga or whatever. To a clinic, they put her to sleep. They sedate her, and when she wakes up, the doctor or whoever in the clinic says it's all done. And I literally, when she told me that, I said, "How do you know you weren't raped? Like, how do you know you weren't naturally inseminated?" And she said, "Well, maybe I would have felt it." And I'm like, but you know, I think it just tells you how exploitation can happen in every
Oh
step,
my gosh.
right? So she falls pregnant.
Like, why did she even need to be asleep? That's what I'm
Exactly.
thinking.
And so I asked her that, and she said, "They told me." And I'm like, but that's not
Oh
the
my
process,
gosh.
right? Like, that's not the
Yeah, yeah,
process.
yeah.
But when you're there, you know how sometimes mapapasubo ka na rin when you're there, right? You don't
Yeah.
want to be difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's Filipino culture. You don't want to be difficult.
And also, she probably has
So
no
she
idea
falls
what the process is. She's not questioning anything, right?
Exactly.
Exactly.
She just knows she's going to get money, and that's fine, right?
She's just
You
thinking of money. Yeah.
So she gets pregnant on the first go. She gets 10,000 pesos for falling pregnant. She's super happy. She's elated. She's like, you know, in 9 months, I get to have a baby and I get $6,000. There's agencies, most agencies in the Philippines, they actually provide the surrogate housing because the agency
Okay,
is
that's what I
also
heard.
worried, right? Like we've promised the IP, the intended parent, that the surrogacy is going to have your baby. What if that surrogate runs away?
Or what if that
Right? So
surrogate
Yeah.
does
actually,
some like, I don't know, illegal drugs or something
Drugs.
very unhealthy
correct,
that the parents are like,
correct.
whoa, right?
Exactly. So they keep them in surrogate housing, also questionable, of course, standards of living and all of that. So she was in surrogate housing. And I think a few weeks in, her handler told her that they couldn't contact the sperm donor. Okay.
I mean, I
And the
already know the
sperm
story, but you
donor,
telling it to me again, I'm like
I know,
reliving the stress. Yeah.
I know, I know. And you know, and she was just in shock and she got depressed and she was praying and she was praying to hear from them. And then after a while, the handler literally was like, "You need to go home. Like, we can't support you anymore. We can't give you free food because there's no money coming in. We can't reach them." And this intended parent, they're a same-sex couple, right? And so again,
Oh,
when
you
it's
know them?
well, she was telling me she met him once. She met him
I
once.
want to find them.
I know,
Just
I know.
kidding.
But like again, if it's illegal, like you don't know who
You
these
can't do
people are. You
anything.
can't find anything. You
Yeah.
chase them down, right? Because you're exposing each other in court. She was sent home. She tells me her pregnancy was obviously depressing. She wanted to abort the child. You know, how do you go from wanting to increase the quality of life of your kids to suddenly having 3 kids with a man you don't know, whose genes are in your
Yeah.
body, right? Like you don't know. And so the baby was born, and she said, you know, that's when she knew when she saw the baby. She's like, "Well, I can't. Right? This is mine now." And so, you know, when I met her, she still didn't seem totally well. I mean, you guys know how traumatic pregnancy is as is,
Yeah.
right? Even if you're
Yeah.
very prepared for it. And so,
Super supported, like everything.
yeah, and she had postpartum.
What
And
more?
So the sperm
all of that.
donor
So-
who was the IP, which is the intended parent, never contacted her again. And then because it's an illegal surrogacy, their sperm, their DNA is now with her and they've formed a baby. 20 years from now, this baby could go looking for him and be like, "Hey, motherfucker, it's me. I'm the guy that you ghosted my mom
That's
in
right.
so many ways." That's also not
Technically, that's exactly
thought about
yeah.
by the intended parent, that, oh my god, this is not, you're running away from something that is obviously maybe going to come back to you. Wait, just side note,
Well,
I messaged you for that. I remember I wanted to donate to that mom. So on the side later, I'm going to get your
You
contact and
did.
her contact, and send some diapers, milk, some money, any help that we can have to give her, because she's definitely a
That would be so
victim
nice.
of her circumstance as well. Okay.
The
So
reason I didn't get back to you on that, by the way, was that she actually disappeared on Facebook.
also,
Again, it's like it's so
Yeah.
hard to find them
Yeah.
after the fact because a lot of, and her own family, who she lives with, doesn't know about the
where
arrangement.
she is?
So
Oh,
yeah, so she basically just said that she got pregnant. She didn't any more expound. So it's such a secret even within
Yeah.
communities.
crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like zooming out in that situation, it's so unfortunate because of what happens, right? But I also want to kind of talk about people who end up choosing to do surrogacy. Like what makes someone choose to do surrogacy to begin with? And I think that kind of leads you into the more complex. This should be like if I'm pro surrogacy or not. Can you talk a little bit more about first why people get into surrogacy?
Yeah, thanks for that because I don't want this to sound like, all like this crazy horror story of what happens when you get a surrogate because there are happy stories and happy endings. And infertility. I know that we all know people who have difficulty conceiving. I
Mhm.
think the WHO says it's 1 in 6. I had a
Yeah.
miscarriage, and I remember when it happened to me, how much more I wanted a baby. Okay. And like, even if it's so common, it's like just that desire is so visceral, right? When you want a baby, you want a baby, right? And so there are people who just cannot have children. And a lot of them will then turn to surrogacy when IVF doesn't work. There are same sex couples who dream of having children, and this is the only way they could have. And there are also, I guess, on the more liberal side, there are single women who want children. We all have a biological clock. Maybe there's no partner yet. We know we want to be a mom. And so these people go for surrogacy. But in the other side of that spectrum, there are also
Yeah.
men who want to be fathers, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who want to be single fathers. And so, given all of these reasons, both medical and emotional, this is what brings people to
Yeah.
surrogacy.
I mean, I know a same sex couple who've had a surrogate. They've taken an egg from this like beautiful model from South Africa. She's like 21 years old, but she's sold like 9 of her eggs already. So this baby, I won't say his name, but has like biological brothers because the mom sells her eggs because she has such like beautiful genes that people pay a premium for it. And I do know like what you were saying, fathers who are single that want to have a baby but they don't have a partner, vice versa. I also know of this lady, she's 50. She gave birth when at 47. She went to Valencia, Spain. She couldn't have any more babies because
Yeah.
her eggs were already matured. In Spain, it's legal. She took the egg of somebody who looked like her, brown hair, brown eyes, same kind of ethnicity, and then she chose the sperm donor, and she gave birth at 47. So this was life changing because she's stable in her career.
Wow.
She knew she wanted to be a mom, and she was like, you know what, if I don't have a partner now, it's fine. I'm going to have a baby. So I guess those are kind of like the more positive sides of surrogacy. But in the Philippines
Yeah.
specifically, when there are no laws about it and it is becoming more and more rampant, as you said, infertility rates are increasing. People are learning later on in life that they do want a kid, but it's actually much harder to have or try to have a kid when you're in your late 30s.
Yeah.
Then they become almost desperate and they turn to this surrogacy as a
Yeah.
means to an end, but not really kind of thinking about all the other consequences it could have because it's not legal.
That's right.
In
That's
this
right.
thing,
Yeah.
do they have a contract? Like even if it's just between themselves? Not everyone.
Not everyone. You don't want the
Yeah.
paper trail showing that you're involved
And
in something
in
so
yeah,
illegal.
good.
I do need to point out though that when it does work out, when the trust is there and it's not broken and it goes well, like I don't know about the people you know, Belle, but the ones that I know who've had
Yeah.
babies via surrogates are just over the moon. It's a dream come true. And they have a really good
Yeah.
relationship with their surrogates, right? And again, that's a choice. Some people are like, I just want to birth your baby and I don't want to have
Yeah.
anything to do with that child. And the parents
Yeah.
also are like, I don't want you guys to know each other because at the end of the day, you still carried my child. And for a lot
Yeah.
of moms,
Yeah.
that hurts, right? And so
Of course.
those arrangements, because without a contract, that's all verbal. But
Yeah.
I do want to point out that when it works
Yeah.
really well, right?
So
The IP has a baby and the surrogate has money that like then
Yeah.
advances their lives by a millionfold.
In your interview, you talked to this one girl who says that she's had a really tough life and she's used to be a surrogate and then she eventually becomes a middleman where she arranges and she only gets friends or people that she knows to be the surrogates, right? And then she talks about how she gets lots and lots of inquiries from middle-aged men who like Filipinas because the mix is really beautiful. And then, I watching it, I was like, I want to understand what my take is in surrogacy because it's so complex, like you said. Like it's so painful that the child's gonna be leaving his birth mom, but at the same time, it helps this birth mom really get forward with her life and help her kids. And then when she talks about how she's able to give her children now everything they want, where she had such a tough life, I got teary eyed because it's so difficult to be put in that situation because most of the time they're Catholic too, like the surrogate mom who was like, I didn't want to abort this kid because I was afraid of what God would say. They're not just like cruel people or people who are super like I don't love these things that I'm carrying. It's a struggle internally for them as well. But the poverty that they live in, the circumstances that they live in, really drive them to enter these type of arrangements that, like I said, are not controlled, like with no contract. So I was getting emotional watching it, thinking, wow, it's just such a crazy world we live in. And I wanted to understand what your guys' take on surrogacy was. Like, knowing what you've been through and the people you've interviewed, Natasha, what's your take on surrogacy?
It's really complicated. It's really complex, right? I think that for me also, it was an emotional roller coaster doing that documentary. I cried at that moment when she told me that as well. And her, she's like, when you meet her, she's super tough, she's super fun, and then her voice cracks, right? And you realize, because it's so easy
Yeah.
to judge surrogates and it's so easy to judge handlers. It's like, who in their right mind would
Yeah.
recruit women to do this, right? But then when you
Yeah.
dig deeper and you go into the nuance, which you touched so much on in that example, you start to realize that it's all, there's a reason for all of this. And there's a lot of like empathy and care also that goes into
Yeah.
carrying a child. And it is to me, it's one of the hardest things a woman could do, is to carry someone
Yeah.
else's child, be
That,
pregnant for 9 months, give
and then you don't
birth
get to
to this
keep it.
child, and let it go. Absolutely, right? Like that is difficult, and that's why. And I told the congressman this. I said, "Don't you think?" Because there is a
Yeah.
bill in Congress that's being filed, but it's only for altruistic surrogacy. So here in Australia, altruistic surrogacy is legal, which means you don't get paid for it, and only like a friend or only a relative can carry for you, so that they know it doesn't become commodification. Okay.
Okay.
And I also told the congressman, okay, but if a woman carries a child, like, don't you think she deserves to be compensated
Exactly.
for that work? Right. So again,
That
even
is
that
work.
example, it's so complex. Exactly,
Okay.
it's work. And so if you ask me what my opinion is, and honestly, this is why I love issues that are so complex and complicated, because there's no real clear answer. And even globally, it's very split. The United Nations says no. They don't think they think there's too much risk of exploitation and commodification. The Catholic Church says no because they will defend life from conception, right? But then you
Yeah.
have feminism and human rights advocates basically saying, reproductive health advocates saying, for women, isn't it our own decision what to do with, and that includes
Yeah.
carrying someone else's child, right? Isn't it a right to start a family? Isn't that someone's right, right? So there's so many nuances, and I think it's really hard. I think my main thing is like it's so hard to judge, right? And
Yeah.
as I went through this process, I found my own
Yeah.
biases breaking down. So my main thing was like, how I'm like, I don't believe that surrogates don't get attached to the baby they're carrying. That is
Yeah.
absolutely like, I don't believe it because I've carried mine and I knew before I had
Yeah.
my child, I was going to give up my
Yeah.
life
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
this being, right? But then I meet women who were like, no, like I actually carried that child and I wanted the best for this child, but I
Yeah.
had no desire to keep it. It
Yes.
was a
And
transaction for
I
me.
respect that. But
I
also,
respect
what is
that.
the attachment or what is the effect on the child growing in a womb, right? Because we talk so much as mothers of how that connection, the umbilical cord, how you have this
Mm.
connection and then it's broken and given to their actual parent. I'm
Yeah.
not pro or against surrogacy. Again, like you said, if it's not regulated, there are so many things that can be that are very dangerous, that lines are being crossed. Going back to what Ava said and what you said a while ago, like, first of all, we don't have abortion in the Philippines. So if this woman who said she was going to get paid to have this man's baby now is pregnant, she can't even ask for a legal abortion because we don't have that. When I say that, it's because we want something that's safe medically for her, right? Where in the Philippines could she go that is legal and safe and say, look, this isn't actually my baby. We're not going through with it. She wouldn't. She would be putting her life at risk. There are a lot of things in our country because of our religion that's kind of block, I guess, women's reproductive health care in a step. Again, this is a very touchy subject. I'm also not saying, okay, we should just allow abortion and things like that. There's so many steps that we need to be able to kind of discuss and also
Discuss,
factor in age,
breakdown.
even um,
Yeah,
context of everything.
context
So
of everything.
yeah, surrogacy in the Philippines is quite. I don't know if we're gonna get there, but in the States, it's legal. In Texas, I know my friends did it there. Diba?
Some states.
How do they do it in
In
the
some
States
states.
that it just becomes like a transaction?
So I think, it's interesting because the question was, am I pro or
Yeah,
against surrogacy? I don't know my
yeah,
stance there, but I think I'm leaning towards regulation. And the reason is black markets will always thrive no matter what
yeah,
happens, right? If a
yeah,
woman wants a baby, they will find a surrogate,
yeah,
whether
yeah,
it's
yeah,
legal or not. If a woman wants a surrogate, she will be a surrogate, whether it's legal or not. In the same way, if someone wanted to consume illegal drugs, they will find it. If someone wanted
yeah,
an abortion, they will get it. The problem with things being unregulated is there's no protection of rights. It becomes even more dangerous when things are done in secret, right? So for me, if this is something that's happening, we're talking about an industry that's meant to hit $129 billion in like 10 years, in 2032. Okay. So it's happening. It's happening. So if it's happening, the least we can do is to protect the people involved. And for me, a law that looks at a surrogacy law that protects the intended parents, the child,
yeah,
first and foremost,
First
and
and foremost, yeah.
and the surrogate, I'm happy to look at that law because right now,
Yeah.
without a law, when people ask me who benefits in surrogacy when there is no law, my answer is
of
the
course.
wealthier
In
person,
anything.
whoever
Yeah,
has more power,
yeah,
right? In anything. And so that means it could be very detrimental to the baby. When there's no screening of an intended parent, how do you know what that person is
yeah.
intending to do with the child? Are they
My
going to be
God.
sex trafficked? Are they going to be,
Yes.
you know what I mean? So when you
Oh my
don't
God.
screen intended parents or you don't screen surrogates who could take your child or could use drugs and give you a child who is completely unhealthy, right? And that's your own genes and they haven't taken care of it,
Yeah, yeah,
everyone
yeah.
loses. For me, I don't know my own thoughts on abortion, for example, or surrogacy. But if it's happening, I just want to protect the people who
Yes.
choose to do it,
I'm gonna copy
right?
your
So
answer.
that's
I
I
my
am
love
take.
that.
copying your
It's
answer.
so well
So
said.
articulate. It's
No,
That's
it's
fine.
amazing.
really well said.
I noted it down in our
No,
notes.
it,
Yeah,
it, it really
to
makes
use that
sense
as
too.
our.
Could you say, like, what's an ethical surrogacy? Like, in a way, that's what it is, I guess. Like, what would you say is an ethical surrogacy? Somewhere where everyone benefits?
Yes, all three benefit. And I think that's
Okay.
possible. I think if you have full actual consent of a surrogate who is not just doing this solely for money, right? If you have
Mhm.
someone who is fully consenting to this arrangement, a surrogate who knows exactly what they're going into, knows the process, isn't blindly going to a bus stop and saying,
Yeah,
yes, sedate me, right? Someone who is not so
yeah,
economically desperate, right? Who understands exactly the process, that's full consent to me, right? Because you also have to trust that women can make decisions for their own body. If a woman says, I
Yeah.
want to carry your child for you, we trust them to make that decision. That is their body, right? And then you have a parent who sincerely wants a child, has proven time and time again that they've tried everything else and really sincerely will take care of a being. Then why don't they deserve a child, right? And then you have a baby who was born in the world to intended parents who love them dearly, who've dreamt of them. Then everybody wins. It's complicated. I'm not a lawmaker. I don't know the intricacies of what that perfect law would look like. I don't think it's there yet. I mean, the world itself disagrees. The countries are in disagreement. There's commercial surrogacy in the US, but only
yeah,
altruistic here. But
yeah.
should we be talking about it? Yes, because it's happening and it's not going to stop. That's one thing that I learned doing this documentary is that it's not going to stop. I mean, even Gloria, who ended up with a child she didn't want, has not shut down the
I
idea of
know.
possibly doing it again.
Yeah,
She says at the end of the documentary, maybe if there's a contract that
I
protects
would.
me,
Yeah.
then maybe I could do it again.
So in that sense, do you feel like maybe the government feels if they regulate it, they'll encourage people to do it? I mean,
Yeah,
is that
100%.
also one of the
I mean, it's the same argument for abortion, right? That's what they also say.
yeah.
They say the same about divorce. My goodness, that's their argument about divorce. If we legalize divorce, more people
Yeah,
will want to
and
get a
more people
divorce.
should,
That's
because
not
if they're
necessary.
in a marriage that's unhappy or abusive, I am sorry, I'm pro divorce.
Yeah,
Also, like Ava and I are a product
me
of,
too.
I guess, annulment divorce type, and I just see how our parents kind of
Mhm.
flourished as parents when they weren't together as a couple. So I have that bias. But yeah, yeah, you're right.
There.
Surrogacy, abortion, divorce, all of these things are kind of at a standstill in the Philippines because, would you say, because of our religion?
Yeah. I mean, the priest that we interviewed in that documentary literally says, I say, what is your advice to parents who want children? And he says, you pray. If it's not God's will,
Yeah.
it's not God's will. And they said we will block any bills that the Congress will try to propose on this, because that's not how we build a family. Same-sex couples should not have a family. Honestly, the Roman Catholic Church is against IVF. So,
Yeah.
they're not fully supportive of that. So 100% it's religion. But even on your take on divorce, right? That's exactly what I mean. You might personally not choose to do an abortion, and that's totally fine. But if you support a law on abortion, that's at least making sure that the people
Are
who
doing it
choose to
safe.
do it,
Yeah.
maybe because they were raped, are doing it safely, right? Supporting a
Mm.
law doesn't necessarily mean you'll do it yourself. It just means being able to see and understand the nuances of society, of poverty, of the economics of the reality of the Philippines,
Yeah.
religion. Um, and so it's just trying it. It's complicated. It's very complicated, but I think that's one lens that
It's definitely
people should
complicated,
shift
but I
and
also
look
think
into.
it's so necessary for us to peel the layers. Like you talking about abortion now, for example, like just to dabble a little bit because it's kind of there and the context of it, right? Like, so if a child is sexually assaulted and abused and then falls pregnant, which one of the most horrifying things I've seen when I was in high school is we did an
Mm.
outreach in somewhere in Alabang. It was like a home for women and kind of like children. And I was
Abused women.
14 or 15 at that time. And I saw a kid younger than me, 12 years old. She wasn't even taller than me. And she had a belly. And I didn't understand it. I was like, why does she have a belly? Like, I didn't even know that she was pregnant. And then
Traumatizing.
one of
Mm.
my classmates was like, I think she's carrying a baby. I think she's pregnant. And imagine me at 14, 15, I'm like, what? You can get pregnant at 12 or 13? Like that the image didn't even click. And then they told us the story about this poor girl who was 12 who was trafficked into parang like a circus, and she was abused by her uncle, and she fell pregnant, and then they just put her in that home. 12 years old. Then again, religion comes in, and it's like, this is God's will, like she should keep the child and things like that. But again, you come up with the idea, how do we protect this child, becoming a
Right.
parent at 12? So it's such a serious
Yeah.
topic that
Exactly.
I don't know if putting religion and I don't know. It's we're also so scared to tackle this topic at the in the podcast because we are a Catholic country and religion plays such a big role. And I'm Catholic, but at the same time, there are things about the church that I don't agree with, right?
Yeah.
Like this
And
whole
talking about
stance
it
for
even.
me. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Go ahead.
No, no, I'm just saying like sometimes you get so scared because this is a public platform, but like in the instance that you just said, Belle, I'm like I would be pro abortion
She
if she
wouldn't,
wanted to do
yeah,
that.
Mm,
Like, not because I mean I just want her to have that choice, and I could be very controversial for saying that, but that's how I feel about it. In
mm.
the same way that if a parent like with this whole surrogacy thing, the way you said like an ethical surrogacy, I
yeah. And
feel like I'm leaning towards
here's the
that.
thing. She's
Mm.
so
That's
young
what I'm
at
for.
12 years old. I don't even know if she can consent to an abortion herself or she would need a guardian. Do you know what I mean? And that
Oh
in
yeah.
itself is
Yeah.
already
Yeah. Oh
so
yeah.
messed up because how can a 12-year-old consent to, sex, or obviously she didn't consent to it, and then
Absolutely.
now go into abortion and everything is just anyways, the point is, like, she's so young to have been pregnant that now she's gonna, if she did get an abortion, she'd be too young to also consent to an abortion. She'd actually need a guardian to say, look,
Yeah.
yes, you
Yeah.
can sedate her, right? Like,
And I understand what you're saying. The point you're making is that, there are certain nuances in everything, right? Like you might not be pro
Mm.
abortion just for the sake of, I just, oops, got pregnant, don't want it, maybe. But then, for someone who's a victim of incest rape, you feel strongly about that. In the same
Yeah.
way that for surrogacy, some proponents will say if it was only medical, if the only reason you need it is because you
yeah,
medically cannot conceive, then yes. Absolute no if it's just a vanity thing that like, oh, I don't want to lose my body. I don't want to get
Yeah.
stretch marks and stuff. So I'm just going to get somebody
Yeah.
else to carry it for me. Right. So again, it's hard and there's nuances and you can't just blanket say no, it's wrong. But I think a lot of people, because it's so complicated and there's like so much cognitive dissonance in your head when you're Catholic and like
Yeah.
but then this is wrong and it's exploitation, like then we treat babies and wombs as a product and that's also wrong. It becomes very complicated and you're just like, forget it,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
just
yeah, yeah,
anti
yeah.
altogether, right? And so I think it's to
Yeah.
have these
Yeah.
conversations and to like hear stories of people so that you realize that like, wait, I don't know if I'm pro or anti, and that's totally fine, but I think we should
Yes.
be talking about it, and so I'm glad we
Yeah, no,
are.
no, I love that. Put that.
I'm glad you put together this
Can you tell
documentary,
people where they can
Natasha.
watch it? They go
You're
on YouTube.
amazing.
They go on Al Jazeera. How do you spell that?
You can literally just type in the search bar surrogacy
Natasha Gutierrez.
Philippines. It should come up.
Or go to Natasha's Instagram. That's where I found it.
Oh, there you
And
go.
it's on her
It's
bio.
not the link.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And it's a link to the documentary. It's 30 minutes. It's really easy to watch, but also
Heartbreaking.
you get
Yeah.
heavily invested. Yeah, you get heavily invested. And maybe to our listeners, this is something we can ask them to do and comment or let us know what your take is, because I'm also interested to know what other Filipinos have to say, if they know
I know
people
that
and what their
in
stance is.
abroad,
You
like
know,
I think in the States, it's like you can be a surrogate if you've already had your own child. Like it can't be your first child. I
what's the
think
reason behind that?
attachment.
it's also like knowing that your body is healthy enough to carry one,
That's true.
Okay,
right?
yeah.
Because I don't know, I've only had one pregnancy. I think you guys have had more than one. Or your second or third pregnancy is a little bit easier, or like you at
Yeah.
least knew what to expect,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
mentally and
Yeah,
physically,
yeah.
you're a little
Yeah.
bit more prepared versus if it was your,
Correct.
here, even in the Philippines, the agencies will only recruit someone who's already had a child and who's 35 and under. So there's like
Yeah.
some health screening, but again, we don't know, right?
Yeah,
But a law would then again regulate that. What are the health
yeah,
screenings that will be done
Yeah.
to a surrogate mother? What's their age?
yeah.
Now it's like, okay, you're 35, you had a baby. Okay, check,
That's
maybe
Even
blood
yeah,
pressure
even
very
test,
family
whatever,
history
superficial.
for
and then
diseases,
go.
Yeah,
right? Like as you get older, people are always like, "What's do you have history of cancer or heart disease and things like that?" So if you are going to, under get a surrogate underground, you kind of also need to know that if you are using that person's egg or sperm, which is important for your
100%.
child. Anyways, why don't you run for office
Exactly.
and start writing laws? I mean, honestly,
Oh,
she should. She should.
my role as a journalist is just to tell you what's actually happening. And then you trust and hope and cross your fingers that the lawmakers will actually be like, you know what, this is an
yeah.
issue we should
I
tackle.
feel like it needs to be like a female
Yeah.
lawmaker because I don't know if a male lawmaker
Yeah.
would prioritize it or would kind of understand. Yeah.
Isn't that ironic that it's a male lawmaker too? I was super surprised when I saw it. I was like, okay, and his name's Keimer. So I was like, Keimer,
Yeah.
girl or boy? It was a boy. He's from Zamboanga. But yeah,
So
isn't
he's
it
writing it.
interesting
He's
that it's
writing one.
not, he's written
Interesting is
it,
the word.
filed it last year, but my goodness, I mean, we
I
have so
love
many
it.
bills, right? Political dynasty. There's so much else. Like I think it's like all the way in the bottom. I haven't checked recently what progress it's made, but for something like this, surrogacy, I think the only thing I will say is
It's
that
not in the priority list.
not a priority list, but it's only going to keep growing. Like when I went to that IVF clinic, I went undercover because they won't talk to you otherwise. The woman told me that in 1 week they had 20,
I
about
was
20
surprised. That's a
examinations.
lot.
Yes. And that right now they have a backlog because there's so many independent, like intended, why can I say independent, intended parents who want, and that's not enough surrogates. Like that's crazy. The
Yeah. Yeah.
demand
Yeah.
is high, right?
No
I do think
wonder. No
And
wonder
the
people
middleman
are.
gets a cut of it.
the middleman gets a
Yeah.
cut, so agencies actually get a huge cut. So I want to say they charge
Wow.
500,000.
What is the role
That's
of the agency? Sorry, before we wrap, what is the role of the agency? Do they keep the surrogate mother kind of safe? They feed them, they just give updates.
so they screen the surrogates, they house them, they provide food and all of that. And they also do the main illegal thing that gets you your baby, which is they forge the birth certificates for you. And so, for example, if I'm an agency, I have my own clinic, and Belle, you're the surrogate, and Ava's the mom. Every single checkup that you have, Belle, for the baby is under Ava's name. So that in all the files,
Yeah.
she was the one carrying it. right? And when you give birth, Belle, the doctor will write the birth certificate and say that the baby
Oh my
is Ava's baby.
gosh.
Because if we put that it's really yours, in the law's eyes, that is your child, right? And so the legal way to do it is for Ava to adopt your child. But adoption in the Philippines, as you know, is a whole other
Yeah.
complicated thing that takes forever,
Yeah.
no certainty,
Yeah.
right? And so people don't want that. Because if at any point in the process of adoption, Belle decides, actually, I want
Yeah.
to keep this child, or
You lose him.
I've heard cases where the surrogate then blackmails the parents or asks for money and says, if you
Or
don't give me 150,000 pesos more, I will claim
Oh
this
my
child as
god.
my own in court. So emotional distress and mental distress, right? And so that's what agencies do. They assure you that they will do all the paperwork, they will do all that illegal stuff, um, and but they also carry that burden of being
Yeah.
put to prison, right? Because they're the ones
Yeah.
facilitating all of it. But there
yeah.
are many agencies now in the Philippines who do it, and they're
And you
across the
just
country. They're not
learn
just in
about it
Luzon.
through Facebook.
There's one in
Yeah.
once you start talking to
Yeah.
people, you'd be surprised. People are like, "Oh, there's
There's a
one here,
whole
there's one there.
world.
My
Yeah.
my sister did it here. My insane." So you have agencies, and then
Yeah.
you have Facebook that just does
Yeah.
handler direct. You have people who don't even have handlers. Belle, if you look up like finding a surrogate, I'm sure you will 100% find a surrogate on your
Oh
own,
my
and you guys
god.
can just talk about it.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually,
Mm.
my night nurse was the night nurse who caught different surrogate mother. Like she had to go to the US because she had to get a baby from a surrogate mom. It's so common that I'm like, I realized, wow, I didn't realize how. And she said she's done it multiple times
That's
where
insane.
she gets the baby and brings it
So
back
even that,
for
like, how do you travel
Yeah.
with the baby? I guess you'll
other
need like
moms.
I don't know, like a certificate or something like that. Yeah.
You pretend it's yours,
So
right? Exactly.
just before we
That's the
wrap,
crazy thing.
Natasha, what would be your advice to people thinking about doing this route of underground surrogacy? You know, whether you're for it, you're against it. What is one thing that you kind of learned after investigating this world? Because people are desperate. People want a baby, and they look at this kind of underground surrogacy thing as a solution to that. What would be your advice to
Yeah.
them?
Well, my first advice is you have to go somewhere where it's legal. And unfortunately, that's not in the Philippines, right? But I also realize that that is such a privileged, elitist thing to say because not a lot of people can A, afford to travel, or B, afford a
Yeah.
surrogate in the US. Ballpark figure given to me in the US, $200,000 to
Wow.
start, right? Not including all the flights you
Like
go
12
to and
million
every
pesos or
additional
something. Yeah.
checkup and whatnot. If I gave you any other advice, I could be in trouble because I'm not
Okay,
supposed
okay.
to like promote it at all. But I think the only thing I will say is that there's a good side and a bad side to it, right? And there are very, very happy stories, but there's also horror stories of how this has happened. I have very close friends who have fulfilled their dream of having a family because of the selflessness and the sacrifice of other women. And that to me, I think at the end of the day is like such an important thing also to highlight. And one of the surrogates that I spoke to, she said, I just hope that people don't think surrogates are bad people because what we do
Yeah.
is not easy. And we wouldn't do this perhaps if we had more of a choice. But many of us also want to do this because we sincerely want to help
Yeah.
people and it gives us joy, right? And so, again, it's complex and it's complicated. I think my main advice to your viewers too is just not to completely shut it down right away, to sort of, look to understand it more before forming their own opinion and not just like what the church says or what the doctor says or what human rights advocates say, but really try to form your own opinion on it and try not to judge because infertility is a very, very painful, difficult thing. And everybody just is trying to, find happiness. So,
Yeah. Thank you so much, Natasha. What a
So
interesting
insightful.
episode. I'm so happy we got to interview. Maybe last before we leave, you want to talk about your upcoming documentary.
ooh,
Yeah.
thank you for the promotion. So I was telling Ava before we recorded that my second Al Jazeera documentary that's coming out will be in 2 weeks, and it's going to be about flood
Okay.
control. So please tuned. Would love for you guys to watch that. And yeah, just keep vigilant in the Philippines. There's so much happening. I'm Filipino too. We need to monitor where our taxes go.
Yes.
So
So where can they find
Yes, but
that
thank you for
second
that opportunity.
documentary of yours? Al Jazeera YouTube?
It will also be on YouTube, and it's coming out in a couple of weeks on the
And then
27th, I
can
believe,
you
of
also
November.
promote your own Instagram so that they can follow you?
Yes, actually, that's where I promote all of my stories. It's at Natasha_G. I have links to all of my stories. But please, if you guys have any questions for Belle and Ava as well on Reddit about
Yeah, let's
surrogacy,
do that.
please ask. I think there's a
Yeah,
lot
yeah.
more, insight when we talk about it as women. And it's like, if you have questions, or again, it's like such a complicated, complex thing. And the more we talk about it, the better. And I think, this is such a great first step that you guys are even
Yeah.
raising this. It's such a taboo topic. So thank you guys for.
Thanks, Natasha. Okay, right before we wrap up, I mean, like between us, I just want to share with our Sexy Time podcast listeners that we just launched our new community at the Sexy Time podcast on Reddit, a space where you can ask questions, suggest future topics, drop your confessions, spill some tea, or even just give a shout out. Literally anything under the sun. You guys can find us as a
They're
subreddit
always
called the
hating
Sexy
on me
Time
there. They're
podcast.
always like, Belle interrupts
Thank you, guys.
everything. La 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 la.
That's how conversations go. They're real authentic on. You didn't
That's
interrupt
why I'm
me.
trying
She's
not to interrupt you. I'm
excited.
like, they're gonna comment that I'm on Reddit. Fun fact, Abs, Natasha and I were actually friends in high school. I call her Ash, but I'm so proud of
Yeah.
like the amazing
So cool.
work that
She
she's
told
been
me
doing, and I try to support her. Like you
work
also
she's
helped, I think, a journalist who went to Paris, right? Yeah, from
Yeah, from
Afghanistan.
Afghanistan. Yeah. So Belle's always been really helpful. Always watching my stories and
Yeah.
commenting, which is so amazing. And
She
then
always
I'm
always
tells
like,
me. She
hey,
also
how
tells
can we help
and
this
she oh
person? No, because I
she's
think the work you're doing is so important.
yes.
And I guess like we've known each other since high school, then you went to university, and just seeing you thriving now, it's been so great to reconnect. I'm so happy that you came on the
Yes.
podcast. And for those of you listening, you have an opinion and you're also in a state where you want to have a discussion, I think Reddit is definitely the avenue where you can, ask the questions and we'll get back to you. Or maybe pass it to
bash my
bash you.
sister.
Pass it to Natasha and say answer them.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.